during the Great Awakening of the last decade, and especially during what used to be called the racial reckoning before the whole George Floyd thing has pretty much gotten memory hold lately, just huge increases in black deaths by murder and by car crash.
Okay, so can we back up? You said a bunch of different things I want to follow up
Yeah.
on. But let's just start at the very beginning. You said the George Floyd thing has been effectively memory hold.
Yeah.
What was it's been almost exactly 4 years since that happened.
Yeah.
Memorial Day 2020. With that, the benefit of, some time to think about it. What was that?
What was it? To a large extent, it didn't happen, or the follow-on events, such as a huge increase in the murder rate, especially among blacks. The murder rate was 44% more blacks were killed by homicide in 2021 than 2019, the year before, and 39% more blacks died in car crashes in 2021 than in 2019.
Car crashes?
Yeah, it all ties together because when the establishment, as they did after George Floyd's death, said, okay, here's the biggest problem in America, even bigger than COVID for the moment, is that we impose too much law and order on African Americans. We are pulling them over for ticky-tack things like speeding and not having registration on their car and just driving badly. And then we're checking for outstanding criminal warrants and maybe searching for illegal handguns. This is all incredibly discriminatory. So the cops went, oh, okay, you don't want us to do that? All right, we'll be in the donut shop. And so the number of traffic stops dropped way down. So people started driving worse, they drove faster, and they started carrying illegal handguns more. And the number of shootings, the number of homicides just went through the roof just immediately. I can show week by week data from the Center for Disease Control. It's pretty astonishing.
Beginning with George Floyd's death and the riots.
Yes, I mean, the all-time most murderous day in the storied history of Chicago's murder narrative, going back, blowing away the St. Valentine's Day massacre by Al Capone and all that, was May 31st, 2020, 6 days after George Floyd's death, when 18 Chicagoans were murdered that day. Why? Pretty much because the cops went down to the Magnificent Mile to keep it from being torched and looted. And the word quickly got around that you can do anything you want in the neighborhood and nobody's gonna notice. And so all sorts of vengeance was just taken on random people out there for personal reasons. And then it just went on and on for several more years. Fortunately, last year or so, the murder rate started finally to come down.
You don't think there's any, and you have the numbers, right? Can we see them?
Yeah.
You don't think there's any question that this was related to the Floyd story, to the Floyd events?
Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the CDC's data weekly. All right. This is the Center for Disease Control collects data weekly on all the deaths in the United States. You can ask for any one particular thing. So this is weeks from 2018 into 2023. The blue line indicates the beginning of COVID lockdowns. The black line is George Floyd's death. All right. The red line is the number of African Americans who died by homicide that week. So it's bouncing around. It has some seasonality. In 2018, 2019, George Floyd dies and suddenly, boom, it goes to this enormous peak and then just slowly fades over the next four, 4 years into 2023.
But it's immediate. It's the second
immediate.
George Floyd ODs,
Yeah.
people start shooting each other.
Yeah, about probably by the Friday after he died on Memorial Day on Monday. It just, there was just a giant cultural revolution, and basically people lost fear of the cops because everybody, the establishment, the media, the politicians were telling America that we have too much policing and too much law and order. And so we got a lot more murder. It's kind of ironic because the name of the movement was Black Lives Matter, and it wound up getting an enormous number of Black lives murdered, incremental versus what you see in 2000.
Boy, that's not even a close call. I mean, that is absolutely
This is one of the
obvious.
biggest findings in the American social sciences, probably since Angus Deaton and Case's finding in 2015 of deaths of despair and how the white working class's life expectancy was dropping in the early 21st century. But the big part of it is that, it also applies to motor vehicle accident deaths. So you could see this pretty consistent level. African Americans have traditionally been not bad drivers. They don't have the kind of problem with driving traditionally the way they had with homicide. But boom, a new plateau that's endured ever since. And to put this in a longer term historical perspective, let me find graphs of the CDC data monthly going back to 1999 through 2021. These are homicide deaths as opposed to murders perpetrated. So these are the races of victims, and blacks, Hispanics, whites in blue.
You can see
9/11 there. That's what it is. 3,000 Americans die by homicide at the hands of Al Qaeda. Okay, and then most years you've got more people get murdered in summer than in winter. They're out partying and so forth. But it's pretty consistent. You can see an increase over here in the Ferguson effect after the Black Lives Matter emerges in 2014, which was a pretty decent year. And then all of a sudden, murders go up dramatically in 2015-16. That helps get Trump elected. You might remember how Black Lives Matter terrorists were assassinating cops in Dallas and Baton Rouge and so forth. Although that's really been memory hold. Anyway, Jeff Sessions came in, kind of told the police departments, no, we're not going to persecute you for doing your jobs. All right. Then Trump got rid of Sessions. Maybe murder started going up a little more. And then comes 2020 and the George Floyd racial reckoning. It's just enormous increase compared to anything else in the 21st century. Now, one reason we don't hear about this is because these graphs are kind of embarrassing because the black line of homicide death rate is so much higher than the light brown Hispanic line there. Hispanics actually in the 21st century have done a pretty good job of lowering their rate of being murdered. And finally, though, when the racial reckoning came along, it got worse again. So we're losing a bunch of that progress. The blue line is the white line down there. It's an order of magnitude below the black line. And it's considered really bad taste to notice, differences in the homicide rate. The other thing I point out is motor vehicle deaths. Motor vehicle deaths per capita, this isn't per mile driven, weren't too bad. They didn't have big racial differences in the past. The whites in the blue line often had the worst. Blacks weren't bad. Hispanics weren't good. But then after 2008, Hispanics actually got better. And the brown Hispanic line is doing pretty good. until the racial reckoning. But you can see the black line just went through the roof again compared to the rest of the 21st century. So what's happened is during the Great Awakening, during the era of Black Lives Matter, what we see is that deaths, two different kinds of deaths, homicides and car crashes, what I call deaths of exuberance, in contrast to Case and Deaton's deaths of despair, seem to have gotten highly correlated. When Black Lives Matter is winning, people, especially Black Americans, die more deaths of exuberance until Black Lives Matter goes out of fashion again and the cops are allowed to pull over bad drivers and check for illegal handguns.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.